Hello and welcome to Barbatos Catholic Podcast, the show where two Mexican dads talk about faith, life, and culture. Walter and Gustavo again this week.
Again, like
Again,
I
like
yeah,
you're
it's
fed
like
up with us. Like
no, it's like what? Who else would it be?
well, we haven't done an interview in a while, so we are on the holidays, so it's a little bit more difficult to like schedule.
People are very selfish with their
With their
time.
time.
They just want to spend it with their family and whatnot.
Yes, some people, man. Some people
Just can't work with that.
Yeah. I'm a professional, cannot work like this. But today is Saint Nick's. Happy feast day of Saint Nick's, the real Santa Claus.
Yep.
So I cannot wait for all the Saint Nick punching Arian. Is it Arian that he punched? I think my favorite has to be I have come to bring glad tidings and I'm all out of, or something like that. And backhanded slaps and I'm all out of glad tidings. It's really funny. Do you put coins on the girls' shoes?
We do everything. We do the letters and we do the coins. Cold too. We're not bashful about showing their mishaps, and where they can improve. But yeah, the oranges and the coins and everything.
You impersonate Saint Nicholas, right? And you write letters to the girls.
Yes, yeah. So we kind of Caro does the writing. She prays to Saint Nick and she writes down pretty much a summation of how the kids' year was and praises them for all the good things that they are doing and offers them encouragement in areas that they can improve. If they're watching too much TV, he tells them, you know what? Well, there's other more productive things. It's a very positive. We don't slap anybody, a la Saint Nick. But yeah, we do that. Handwritten letters and stamp it with like a wax seal and everything. We try to keep it as authentic as we can. It's amazing. A lot of work, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it to see their faces.
On the Cantu household, we got it to the point that this is the first year that everybody's putting out their shoe outside of the room. And I was asking Deanna if Saint Nick was prepared. And the response was brilliant. She's like, we still have some candy from Halloween laying around. Like, perfect. Brilliant. So we're not going to do handwritten letters with wax seals, but
to each their own,
we'll get there. I'm not saying that is the right thing to do. It's just you do what you can do.
Yeah, I think it's just so it doesn't go unnoticed. The important thing is to tell the kids and spend time as a family just reflecting on Saint Nick's life. To make sure that they know, the distinction and the origin story. Now we're all about origin stories with these superhero movies. Well, we should have our own origin stories that we pass on to our kids. I think it's super important, and we have a lot of fun. There's a lot of good content too, and like if you go on Formed, there's like every other documentary or cartoon that you can watch with the family. That's usually what we do too at night after the rosary. Just put on this animated film about the life of Saint Nick, and it's really just about spending time with family and with Saint Nick and his day.
Saints Alive podcast, shout out to them. They did a 2-part episodes of the life of Saint Nick. Pretty good stuff.
Nice.
All right, so we are in the second week of Advent, and we're getting closer and closer to next week. It'll be Saint Lucy, and then the Friday after that is going to be December 16, which marks the official beginning of Las Posadas. And we mentioned in the episode from last week that we were going to dedicate a full episode on this Advent tradition. And this is it. Um, you don't need to grab any pen or paper. We actually have an ebook that we put together, and we'll have it on our direct.me/barbatus for download for everybody to go and get it, so you can follow along. But let's start from the beginning. A very good place to start, as the Sound of Music says. What are what are posadas? Well, posadas are a novena, basically, that is celebrated in Mexico and other Latin American countries between December 16 and Christmas Eve. And well, the word posada in Spanish means inn or lodging. And through these 9 days, we are walking with Jesus, Mary, and Joseph on their way to Bethlehem, basically covering um, the things that happen on Luke chapter 2, 1 through 7. Well, how did they originate? Gustavo already knows because he's read the ebook. Do you want to take that part?
Yeah, sure. So the Augustinian friars of San Agustin, the Acolman, near Mexico City, are believed to have celebrated the first posadas around 1586. A friar called Diego de Soria, the Augustinian prior, obtained a papal bull from Pope Sixtus V to celebrate what we call Misa de Aguinaldo, or Christmas gift masses, between December 16th and the 24th. Aguinaldo. God, man, I never had a job in Mexico that gave me like aguinaldo.
I had to explain to Diana what aguinaldo was.
Mm-hmm.
For those listening, aguinaldo in Mexico,
It's a
you get
Christmas
your,
bonus.
yeah, basically you get like a month's worth of your salary the second week of December. Um, that's like a common practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing here in the U.S. You just get 26 paychecks if of your salary, obviously. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, it's a nice thing. But
I
everybody
know.
has money around that time, so
Yeah. Yeah.
also dangerous.
Yeah. Se lo pistean, ¿no?
Well, that's one. You can drink it, or there's a lot of muggings happening too because people know that people have money.
Dude, the lines at the bank at that week were nuts. It's like, don't go
Yep.
to the bank that weekend because it was crazy.
Yeah, just at the ATM. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane. Okay, so the Augustinian friars start this. It starts in the. It's kind of a mixture of Catholicism in Aztec traditions,
Mm-hmm.
because the Aztecs used to honor Huitzilopochtli, one of their gods, during the winter solstice, which usually falls around like December 20th, 21st, depending on the year. And they would have special meals, and they would have guests coming to the gatherings, and they would give like small figurines or idols made from like a toasted corn paste with agave syrup. And the posadas are the result of like the merging and expanding, I would say, of these celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
um, they were originally celebrated in churches, but slightly they moved into the homes and the neighborhoods, where families would like celebrate them as a neighborhood during these 9 days. And I do remember my grandma, my mom's mom. She was the one that would put together the posadas in the neighborhood where she
Mm.
lived, and that's where we would go, because each family volunteered for one night from the 16th to the 23rd at least. And then Nochebuena, Christmas Eve, everybody would be with their family in their home,
Mm-hmm.
like the last posada you celebrate with your family, because that's another cultural difference between the U.S. and Mexico. Like we would open presents on Christmas Eve at midnight,
Hmm.
and then pack the car with all of the gifts and go home at like 2, 3 in the morning, and wake up the next day and eat more tamales, and play with your toys, versus Christmas Day opening of presents and all that stuff. Did you grow up with posadas in your neighborhood as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was in youth group from age
That's right.
12. So that was a staple, we waited all year for that. And I mean, there was like 30 or 40 of us in youth group. So it was a lot of guys and a lot of girls, like roaming the streets with candles around that time. And it was pretty cool because there wasn't a lack of places that we could set up for that day. And yeah, I remember it vividly, just going around the neighborhood and going, doing the what we're gonna get into here, the anatomy of a posada.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just like a lot of fun and a lot of fun and good, clean fun, spending community. And bitter cold though. Oh my gosh, Nogales is like super cold in December and January. That's as cold as it
Yeah.
gets. But we really didn't mind when you're young.
Yeah, nobody, nothing aches.
Mm-mm.
Just a spring chicken.
Yeah, right now it'd be like I wait for you in the car. I'll keep the
I
heater
know,
going.
dude. Like Saturday, this last Saturday was like the wettest day of the year in Phoenix, and my knee is starting to hurt.
Oh no,
I'm like, I'm too young for having knee problems
I know.
to start having. Anyways, we'll talk about my knee problems. Pray for my knee that I get better. I know that I need to lose weight, but
We're
that's
gonna
that's
have
a
an
different
episode
conversation.
on Walter's knee.
Walter's knee. Yeah. Okay. So the anatomy of posada, like Gustavo was saying. So if you want to celebrate or host or both posadas with your family and friends, or your parish or your youth group, like Gustavo was saying, we try to put together a guide to break down the basic components of this celebration. So usually, the way that I remember it, and Gustavo, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mm,
but normally people will like gather like around 6 p.m. ish. They can happen. It was usually like an evening kind of happening.
mm-hmm.
Um, but that doesn't mean that it's like hard and fast rule. Like if you need to do it earlier than that, keep in mind that in Mexico dinner is like 8 p.m.
Yeah. Well,
So
the point I think is to um, get as close as possible to traveling that journey that that Joseph and Mary were traveling, right?
right.
Which it was at night. It was cold. We know it was cold. So it's not
Try to
something that,
recreate.
yeah, it's not something that you want to do like at noon or anything like that.
Right.
Ideally, and it's that recreation, that bringing to mind what they went through, seeking lodging in those moments.
Yes. So once you have everybody at the place that you are meeting, um, you are going to pedir posada. You're going to ask for lodging, and there's very specific song that I don't know who composed it. Probably the Augustinian friars, but it it's kind of like a waltz, like three quarters,
Hmm.
um, and you divide the attendees in two groups. So half of the people are going to be inside, and half of the people are going to be outside. So the group that is outside usually carries los peregrinos, or the pilgrims, which is Mary, Joseph, and well, Mary pregnant
And
with
Joseph.
Jesus,
Uh-huh.
and Joseph. Bonus points if you have a donkey. If
Hmm.
Mary's sitting on a donkey. Um, for the longest time when I was a kid, I was like los peregrinos, but I never knew that it was Jesus, Mary, and Joseph.
Hmm.
I'm like, huh, it's the same group of people. Anyways,
So what
So
can I tell you one detail that we used to do?
yeah,
So on December 12th, on Our Lady of Guadalupe feast day, right?
yeah.
We There's this huge procession from parish to parish in Nogales, and I tell you, the whole city gets involved, right? The firemen, police, schools. Well, back then, right? Right
All
now,
100 people
all
get together.
100 people in Nogales step out of their hut. Shout out to Nogales, my beautiful Nogales. Um, but it's like a whole. It was like a whole town event. So there were like, imagine the light parade here in Phoenix, right?
Right.
That's what it kind of was like. But it was obviously very very Catholic centric. Like the firefighters would have these huge displays of Our Lady and the Tilma,
Hmm.
and all the parents would dress up their kids as Saint Juan Diego, and like a bunch of parents would dress up their daughters as Our Lady. For us, we would participate as part of the youth group. We would pick one Juan Diego, one Joe, or like one Juan Diego, yes, and one Mary, and
Hmm.
that same person that volunteered to be Our Lady would be like the actual uh, Mary that we would take into the posadas. Then we
Oh,
would just
okay. Yeah.
assign her as Saint Joseph. So we
Right.
you
That's
could carry like let me clarify. You can take like statues or an image or
yeah.
something that symbolizes the Holy Family, right?
Hmm.
And then we just piggybacked on the fact that we already had picked somebody to play Our
Right.
Lady, and that person would be uh,
I mean that
Mary.
too. You can dress up like two kids to take the place of
Hmm.
Joseph and Mary if you want to do that. That's also valid. And then the gathering place would be like the main entrance to wherever you are hosting the event. So um, the inside group stays on one side of the door, the outside group stays on the other side, and then a song is sang, and there's like this back and forth.
So it's like antiphonally, right? Kind of like doing it back and forth.
Yes, or like litany of
Hmm.
sorts. I've heard it said as like the litany of the Posada, and it kind of recreates a conversation Joseph would have had with an innkeeper in Bethlehem that allowed them to stay in the manger, and for safety reasons, if you want to have the candles, the people that are outside carrying candles, they can. If you have very little ones, maybe use the ones that are electric to have like a little light
Hmm.
bulb, LED candles. Um, should we go over the translation in English? We're not gonna torture you singing it, but let's just read the translation of the. I'll do the outside. You do the inside.
Sure.
So it begins saying, "In the name of heaven, I beg you for lodging, for she cannot walk, my beloved wife."
And then the people on the inside are going to start by responding, "This is not an inn, so keep going. I cannot open. You may be a rogue or
These
like
people,
a vagrant, or somebody dangerous."
yes. Um, the response to that would be, "Don't be inhuman. Have mercy on us. The God of the heavens will reward you for it."
Then the response to that would be, "You can go on now and don't bother us, because if I become annoyed, I will give you a thrashing."
It escalates pretty quickly.
Well, you're waking him up from a
Uh,
slumber.
that is
He
very
doesn't know who
true.
you are.
Um, so then it continues saying, "We are worn out, coming from Nazareth. I am a carpenter, Joseph by name."
I don't care about your name. Let me sleep, because I already told you we shall not open the door or open up.
And then we have a special guest today. We have Lucia, who is
Oh, cutie pie.
doesn't want to go to sleep. Um, so then it continues to say, "I am asking you for lodging, dear man of the house, just for one night, for the Queen of Heaven. So Joseph starts doing this counter argument that is pretty intense, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
Joseph is going like, dude,
going all out.
trust me, you're gonna want to open the door.
Right.
So the response from the innkeeper would be, well, if it is a queen who solicits it, why is it at night that she travels so alone?
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair question, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, then Joseph goes on to explain, my wife is Mary. She's the Queen of Heaven, and she's going to be the mother of the divine word. All true things.
Hmm. And then at this moment, the person on the inside or the people on the inside recognize or start recognizing, are you Joseph? Your wife is Mary? Enter, pilgrims. I did not recognize you. Trust us, it rhymes and it sounds nicer in
Yeah.
Spanish. And when you sing it with a bunch of people, trust us on this.
Um, then it goes to say, may God pay, gentle folks, your charity, and thus heaven heap happiness upon you. And the inside people respond,
Blessed is the house that shelters this day the pure Virgin, the beautiful Mary.
and then there are two stanzas that don't follow this the metric of the waltz at the end, where people, as they are entering, the group from outside is entering the house, um, they sing.
What's a twist? It's the crescendo, Walter. You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah. It's like a
gotta amp it up.
keychain and everything. Um, enter, holy pilgrims, receive this corner. For though this dwelling is poor, I offer it with all my heart. Let us sing joyfully as we ponder that Jesus, Joseph, and Mary are honoring us today. Um, so that's kind of like the opening activity, I guess, and one of the that the actual uh, name of asking for posada, pedir posada, that's how you ask for
Hmm.
posada. Um, and then after that, everybody's inside, and the prayer portion of the posada follows immediately. So once everybody settles and finds a place to sit or whatever, um, I my family traditionally would pray the rosary,
Hmm.
especially the joyful mysteries, since they include the Annunciation, the Visitation, the birth of Jesus. But alternatively, I've seen that the infancy narratives can be read from the Bible.
Hmm.
The first two chapters of the Gospel according to Saint Luke, and the first two chapters of the Gospel according to Saint Matthew. Um, what do you guys do with youth group when you?
We did the rosary. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm. It's pretty
Um,
standard, you know, and I think everybody
yeah.
can follow it, and you don't have to be logging around the Bible if you're walking with little ones and stuff like that. But the host family, I think, can also bring ideas up. The idea is to keep it consistent between the different homes that are going to be hosting throughout the novena,
Yeah.
and to not make it super long. No,
That's right. If you're my grandma, you're gonna make a rosary last like 45
now,
minutes to an hour.
oh yeah, now we're easy.
Yeah, with the
The litanies, right?
litany of Loreto and all
Hmm.
that. Um, and then after the prayer part is over,
Party
then
time.
the fellowship part, right? The party time. So here are some suggestions of things that we have experienced growing up in Mexico of food and drink that are seasonal during this time of year. Um, and refreshments are kind of expected.
Hmm.
Um,
But it can
sometimes
be a potluck, right? I
it
mean,
can be a potluck. Yes,
hmm.
exactly. Um, I there were times where there was only like you know tostadas con salsa or something like
Hmm.
that, super simple, um, or you know nothing. It would just be like you get that and you get your bolo, your aguinaldo, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah,
And then
families for us used to have like from like full on meals to coffee and cookies, like the
yeah,
simplest thing, like you said. You know, it's just it doesn't need to be fancy. It's just meant to like the word says it, it's meant to foster fellowship and community.
Yes. Um, but for example, on Christmas Eve, it's kind of customary to have tamales for the dinner for Christmas, um, and well, who's gonna say no to tamales? I feel like I
Well,
wouldn't.
well, that's a conversation for another episode. Depends when they come,
I
where they come from, and who made them.
That is true. We're just
No,
gonna
I'm
say
kidding.
we're gonna do the outtakes of your like tamales story one day.
Dude.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
I don't think we have time for
I
that
know.
one today, but it's very funny. Atole is another thing that you can have. It's a warm drink. It's made out of masa, um, the corn flour that you use to make tamales as well. Water, milk, cinnamon, vanilla, and piloncillo, which is kind of molasses. And So you can make like the base atole recipe, like a vanilla atole with all the ingredients that I mentioned, and you can add any
Hmm.
flavorings to it. But if you use chocolate to flavor it, then it becomes champurrado,
Hmm.
which I don't know why the chocolate flavored one would have a different name, but
Well, yes and no. Traditionally, champurrado that I know
uh-huh.
is yes the same ingredients, but you toast the flour. The flour has to be
Okay,
toasted, and I remember
interesting.
this vividly because we used to sell it as part of youth group fundraising
Uh-huh.
at the cemetery for Dia de los Muertos. So we would make
Okay.
like a giant pot of this thing, and yes, one of the moms from youth group would help us with tamales, and that would
Mhm.
be our fundraiser for our retreats.
Mm,
Um, and we would go to the cemetery, and obviously in Mexico, Dia de los Muertos, everybody's at the cemetery. There's a big festival and whatnot. You've seen Coco,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, champurrado is like a tedious, very, very laborious gig from what I remember.
Well, you have to stir it
A
so
lot.
you don't get clumps.
Well, you have to stir the flour until it gets
Yeah.
toasted, like dry. You can't add anything to it. And when it and then there's like a magic moment where it's perfect, and then it's just burnt, and you ruined it. That's
The,
how it
the
was explained to me.
the recipe that we included
It's
does
more
not
simple.
toast
Yeah, it's it's
the flour, so
it's
don't
it's
worry about
it's
it.
a little bit more basic. But yeah, it's your toasted flour, and it's your cinnamon, your cocoa. That's kind of like the staples of a champurrado.
Yeah. And it warms the heart as
Hmm.
well.
And burns
And
the lips.
and burns the lips. If you don't blow on it, you need to wait for let it temperate. Um, it will always burn your
Yeah.
tongue if you are not paying attention. Another thing that can burn your tongue if you're not paying attention is ponche. Ponche or ponche navideño. It's basically a fruit tea. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Um, is made with tamarind, piloncillo, again, cinnamon, guavas, tejocotes, which I recently learned that in English it's called a hawthorn apple.
I was today years old.
When I learned that, prunes, raisins, apples, pears, sugarcane, so pretty much the kitchen sink,
Hmm.
and you put all of these ingredients together in a stock pot, and you boil the crap out of them, um, and then it makes like a really nice warming um, drink. And on top of that, you can spike it if you feel inclined to do so with tequila or brandy or whatever
Hmm.
else you want to put on it. That was kind of like my um, the Lopez side of the family and my mom's side of the family. It was not Christmas without two things: ensalada de Navidad, the apple chunks with like marshmallows and like sweet cream,
Oh, dude. I had
which we didn't put in
forgotten
the
about
ebook.
that.
It's not Christmas without that thing, which is
That is,
disgusting.
dude, it's amazing.
I
I
don't
had
like it.
Well, it has the coconut, right? The coconut and the nuts
Yeah,
and the
grated
whatnot.
coconut and walnuts or pecans.
Dude, you just brought me back to when I was 5 years old. I used to love that. I probably wouldn't like it too much now, even though I'm a
Well, you
sweet
probably,
tooth.
yes, exactly. That's
I'm
what I
not
was
like that
saying.
much.
That you probably liked it when you were a kid because
Oh yeah, it's
it's
so rich.
basically, yes, sugar and sugar and sugar. But
When
everything is.
yeah, when marshmallows is the main ingredient, yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it's like a
nothing else you can
seven-layer
do.
dip.
There's nothing else you can do to bring the sugar levels down.
Also, calling it salad when it has marshmallows in it is just
I'm
no.
just eating a salad. I'm eating healthy, a little bit of a salad.
Um, and I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Um, we also have a recipe for this in in the ebook. Um, the last thing that some of the ideas of like the seasonal stuff that we have is buñuelos. And buñuelos, Gustavo and I have. Um, he has his version of it. The one that we included is kind of like mentioned is kind of a basic thing. The easiest way to describe it is would be like a flour tortilla that has been deep fried and tossed in cinnamon sugar.
Hmm.
However, in places like Sonora, what do they put on top of it?
Well, it's really complicated again. I don't know if this is. I have my mom as reference, right? My mom made
Right.
everything
Well,
complicated, but
your
everything
mom ran
was
a restaurant, so
yeah, and
can
everything
take
was
her word for
so
it.
good. So I can't fault her for making it complicated. Because I think if you go as simple as what you just mentioned, it it passed the test. It's a buñuelo. That's
Hmm.
the basic. But yeah, piloncillo, basically your molasses mix. Uh,
And make a syrup out of
make
it.
a syrup, like a very, very sticky syrup. And why is it sticky, you ask? Because it has to hold on to a bunch of crumpled peanuts that go on top of it.
See, that was the part that I was like, peanuts.
Dude, it's pretty amazing. So in my case, there's no powdered sugar or cinnamon or anything like that. It's the syrup, and then you're just like covered with like mashed crushed peanuts. That's the buñuelo that I grew up with.
But does it have the fried tortilla on
Oh
the
yeah,
bottom?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay.
yeah. I
See,
guess
we're
it's the
not animals.
toppings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not
It's just so for those listening, is the closest thing would be like an Indian fry bread,
yeah,
but like thinner and
like
crispier.
really thin.
Yeah. Um. Anyways, and and from there, that's kind of like your basic. Once the fellowship part ends, everybody goes home, and but there are some extras that you could have. Um, Especially on Christmas Eve, on the last day of Las Posadas for the celebration of Christmas. The bolo or aguinaldo that we mentioned is kind of like a goodie bag for the guests. And the rule in my grandma's house was if you didn't pray the rosary, you didn't get a bolo, you didn't get aguinaldo. So you had to pray in order to get the goodie bag.
Hmm.
So it would usually be like a cellophane bag, and to bulk it up at the bottom, you would get like an orange, then a bunch of shell peanuts, a few pieces of candy, and that was it. That was your bolo. So
Hmm.
everybody was like eating peanuts or peeling oranges or eating a little bit of candy. It's a good time. It brings a lot of memories, honestly, to be a kid and getting that, because you go to pray the rosary and you get a treat 9 days
Hmm.
in a row.
Hmm.
So that was like the motivation to go to Las Posadas. It's like,
Yeah,
van a
for
tener
sure.
bolo.
Hmm. The
Um,
tough part for me was when the families involved for the hosting didn't like get get together and discuss what they each were gonna have, and you would
uh-huh.
end up having like tamales for like 9 straight days.
Oh, well, yeah, there's
And
that.
you're like, come
And you
Christmas
know
morning, you're like, I cannot
you're
eat
going
another
to
tamal.
have them until New Year's
Mm-hmm.
at
Yeah.
that rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad's mom, well, both sides of the family, they would make, I kid you not, like maybe 300 tamales for
Mm-hmm.
Christmas Eve. Hold on one second.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom, the same thing. It was, she would make so many tamales. She would make them to sell. So she would sell them, but then
Well,
she would
that's
make
different.
our portion of it, and they would last through, yeah, the holidays for sure.
No, we would consume our own stash, our
Mm-hmm.
own supply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom would make so many that, like, she would just freeze them,
Uh-huh.
and then like randomly in March, she'd be just like, "We're having tamales because that's what we have." It's like sweet.
Uh, yeah, and after a little bit, it's like, okay, it's welcome. It's a
Mm-hmm.
welcoming change of pace
Yeah.
because they're so uh, labor intensive.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, piñatas are a Christmassy thing. Well, every birthday in Mexico has a piñata or has to have a piñata apparently. But piñatas now are very different. They all have like different kinds of shapes, and like you can have a Buzz Lightyear or Woody piñata. But originally, it was used a, a way to catechize
Mm-hmm.
people. It was also, it's not originally from Mexico. It started in China, then it went to Italy, and then from there went to Spain. From Spain came to Mexico in the 16th century by the same Augustinian friars of Acolman. Not I'm starting to make up names and superheroes. Uh, and so the original piñata used to be a clay pot filled with candy and fruit, and then they would attach 7 cones or spikes made out of uh, paper, and then they would glue all these papier mache, colorful papier mache, on the outside of it, and kids would take turns beating the piñata with a stick, sometimes blindfolded,
Mm-hmm.
until someone would break the clay pot, and then all the goodies would spill out of on the floor. And then after that, it's a free for all for everybody to grab as many things that they could want. But yeah, so it's also a very dangerous activity because with the stick, and someone is not paying attention can get hit in the head. It's a
Yeah.
whole ordeal to
There's
say that it happened.
there's a great episode in The Office when they do like a welcome back party for Oscar, who's Mexican, right?
Uh huh.
And they have like all these different Mexican things, and and they have a piñata, and somebody's it's Dwight's turn, and he grabs the stick, and somebody's gonna put a blindfold on him. And he's like, "No, no, no, I don't need that."
I know.
It's to make it harder, doofus. He's like, "No, no, no, I don't need that."
I know.
he
We
just
get so
grabs
frustrated.
he just grabs the stick like a samurai sword. Is the best.
Um, but again, there's just a lot of symbolism on it, right? So,
Hmm.
so the way that those things represent uh, other things. So, like the blindfold, um, it would be the faith, because sometimes faith is blind. 7 cones would represent the 7 deadly sins. The beating of the piñata represents a struggle against temptation and sin, and breaking the piñata in the subsequent shower of treats would represent the reward for keeping the faith. So even the song, it's like to stay on the path, if I remember correctly.
Dale,
Uh,
dale, dale. Yeah.
don't lose your aim,
Hmm.
because if you lose your aim, you lose the path.
You lose
Basically,
your way,
you
basically.
lose
Pierdes
your
el
way.
camino.
See that rhymes.
Hmm.
Um, there's variations depending on where you are in Mexico. Because then I heard that it's like, ya le diste una, ya le diste dos,
Hmm.
ya le diste tres. We don't say that in Monterrey.
Yeah.
It's different.
I think that was invented to get kids to let go of the stick,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah, it's
If
like you get 3 hits
time's up.
and yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And last one, pastorela.
Wait.
Pastorela,
Let me. Did they do it by size of the kids?
of course, you have to have the wimpy little kids first, and then the horse-like kids last. I would always be the last one to hit the piñata in my family.
You were pretty tall, huh?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
be the
so that's the
tallest of
thing.
the
That's
cousins.
the thing. It sucked though when the second or third kid got lucky and it just hit it just right, and it
Especially if
ruined
they
it for
get a
the other
flimsy
20
one.
kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if they get like a flimsy one that is just made out of paper, you know.
I think
Anyways,
they started making them like indestructible. I think you need a rocket ship now to, or
how
like
do
a rocket launcher
a
to,
lightsaber?
yeah.
How do you say carrizo in English?
I don't even know how to say it in Spanish. What is that?
It's like a reed. It's like it's not like bamboo. It's like thinner,
Una vara.
and como una vara, pero está hueca por dentro. So it's like a hollow cylinder of yeah. I think a reed is the closest thing that
Mm.
translates, and they would use that to like make the structure, and then they would like
Oh,
put like
interesting.
newspapers to make like the shape of it,
Huh.
and it's easy to break with a stick. But then there would be like jagged edges
Hmm.
to work with. So again, it's kind of like an extreme sport.
It's pretty
Eso es,
dangerous because even the dads that are like on the roof of a car and on the roof of the house, like pulling this
holding the
thing up
rope.
and down with the rope that they
Uh,
have like very
it
very loosely tied to their hip.
it's always a single uncle.
Hmm.
The uncle that is single that has had like a few beers, and it's like yo me subo.
I got
Is
this.
yeah,
How
I
many
can.
kids you want me to hit?
I know. And then they play with you, and then they land like the
Yeah.
piñata on your head. Anyways,
Hmm.
the whole ordeal. Um, okay. Lastly, uh, we're talking about pastorelas. Pastorelas are plays that recreate the events of Luke chapter 2, 8 through 20, where the shepherds follow the star of Bethlehem to find the Christ child. Don't ask me why this became a thing, but I remember in my family we would put together our own shows for the whole family on Christmas Eve. Um, and the plot is always the same. It's the angels led by Gabriel trying to tell the shepherds about the Messiah being born, and then the demons led by Satan trying to stop the shepherds from adoring the Christ child. But it would take wild forms where like um, there's so many ways to tell the story, and so many ways to represent those verses from the Bible that it just became like a popular thing for
Hmm.
people to adapt that story and make it so like there was one where the demons and the angels fight like Street Fighter in order to decide who wins. Another one they play like a match of soccer, and there were like popular productions
Hmm.
in actual theaters where like people would
Wow.
like, at least in Monterrey, it was like a big deal to have like a pastorela in a
Yeah.
theater. Um, of course, it would be like full entertainment and not necessarily something of a religious sentiment.
Hmm.
Um, but the ones that are like at home would be more on the uh, try to be more uh, in tune with the gospel.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the most traditional ones that I could find is called La Noche Más Venturosa, and it's fairly old. This was written in 1821 by Jose Joaquin Fernandez de Lizardi. Um, and I was reading it, and it's pretty dated. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like a whole scene with just the shepherds like showing their daily life,
Hmm.
and then it takes a while for the angels
Hmm.
to make their entrance and tell them about the Messiah. But again, this is one of those traditions that started in the church and then it made it to the neighborhoods and the families, um, and it's just part of the celebrations of Christmas Eve. That it's not something that is absolutely necessary to have, but I guess it's one of the things that I really love about being Mexican. That there's so many things that now I'm trying to pass on to my children, and they ask me, "But why do you do those things?"
Hmm.
And I'm like coming up with all of these answers and doing research of when it started and why do we do it, and it's just like the faith, right? Like passing on the faith, passing
Hmm.
on tradition and culture. And maybe we have listeners that are in other parts of the world or have different ethnic backgrounds than we do, and they do something uh, different for Christmas Eve, and that can enrich how we celebrate the birth of our Lord. I
Hmm.
think that is very, very valuable.
Yeah, and I think it's also the community aspect, like I mentioned earlier. Our faith, at least in my case, growing up, it was something that you lived in community. I have like really good memory. I think I've told the story of like my the church of my town of my community was like up in the hill where
Hmm.
everybody could see it, and it has like this gigantic cross that lights up at night. So it's kind of like a beacon, right,
Hmm.
for the whole community. And the bell would ring, and you could hear it like for miles. So that was the one thing that unified, that we all had in common. We all knew that come Advent, Christmas time, all of these events were going to happen, and it was pretty awesome to just grow up in that faith centered community, and everybody
Yeah,
got involved. You were everybody's kid at that moment, right? Because everybody's mom knew how to make tamales. Everybody's mom knew how to make atole,
champurrado. Yeah,
champurrado. So it's just like you would go to another house, but it was like you were at your own house. So I've had really fond memories of pastorelas as well, and um, posadas. It was such a fun way of living the faith. And when you get older, you're like, okay, then how do I apply this to my own family, and what can we do to pass these traditions on? I think Mexican culture is beautiful, and it is important that we pass these ideas and these traditions on, so they just don't like
die.
go the way of the dodo bird. We want to make sure that there's so much richness in them because they are rooted in Our Lady and Saint Joseph and the baby Jesus. That ultimately, that's what that's how he decided to come. As a baby in the
Yeah,
cold, in the night, asking for lodging. They didn't have a place. Um, so pastorelas, I mean, posadas is a great reminder of that, and obviously the joy and that happens after you let them in, kind of resembles letting them into your heart.
yeah.
That's what we were taught, as kids. Abide in let Christ abide in your heart and in your home, and then the party really really happens.
Amen to that. Um, so yeah, that was pretty much all that we had to cover from this very humble guide, which is not exhaustive by any means, but we hope that you find it helpful. Um, this is kind of like that companion to it, try to
Hmm.
explain, in an hour episode, all the things that we put together and that piece of information. So if you want to get a copy of the, let's call it ebook about Las Posadas, go to direct.me/barbatus, direct.me/barbatus, and we are going to have a link where you can download the ebook, which is basically a PDF that you can have on your phone, send it to your Kindle, and for easy access. We have a couple recipes in there and all the information that you heard in this episode. And if you have any feedback on it, it's more than welcome. What do you do to celebrate Posadas? Are you gonna if you use our guide to celebrate Posadas for the first time and you
just
haven't
tag
done
us
it,
on it.
yeah, and let us know how it went. If you're gonna host a posada, invite us.
Yeah, dude.
Be happy to go and eat tamales and chamburrado
and tell you what you're doing wrong. It's like, no, not that way. You're singing it wrong. Start over.
I know. Is if you want to hire singers for pedir posada, we also can teach lessons.
Bring the
have
guitar
a guitar right there. Gustavo can lead, and the whole bit is a posada in a box. We're trying to start doing that service.
You gotta have the ponche though. That's how I soften my singing voice.
Right, and a little bit of tequila.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we hope that you have found this episode helpful. If you did, then share it with a friend or with family. Like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and all that fun stuff that you can do on social media and YouTube. And again, direct with me /Propatus for the download there. We also have some Advent goodies in there for you as well. And we will see you next week. Bless us, Casey.
Pray for us. Saint Nick.
Saint Nick, pray for us.
Pray for us.
Until the next time.